Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys a guide to the origins and traits for set 6.5. Now, in this video, what this video will be me talking about every single synergy and talking about some other traits that pair well with those and what each of the traits do. What this video is not me telling you the best items. This is not me building team compositions for you. This is me just giving you guys the information to have a head start going into set 6.5. This video is best for a beginner or a player who just does not have time to play test on PvE, or just doesn't have time, or just wants a head start, you know, going into 6.5, doesn't want to have to take all this time to test and can rely on someone like me who's a challenger level player who has spent a lot of time testing all of these traits. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it and talk about our first trait, Twinshot. So Twinshot is probably one of the easiest traits to play around. If you don't know what it does, Twinshot, you gain a little bit of bonus attack damage, but don't really pay attention to that part. It's not very important because some of these are not AD based champions. But you gain a little bit of attack damage and you get a chance that your attack and your ability, so your auto attack and your ability can happen twice. So you can cast it twice. So if you guys didn't know this, like Graves could cast his smoke bomb twice in the last thing. So so it works on abilities and attacks. Note, this is not bouncing. This is not bouncing to another enemy. This is just recasting onto the same enemy. There is a augment that allows your attacks to bounce. Okay, this is one of the easiest ones to play around because whoever you're going to carry is who you're going to build around. So if you want to carry a Corky, you're probably going to be playing around 3 yordles at minimum, or you're playing like a 6 yordle-esque build, and you're just adding an additional Twinshot with them, whatever makes sense for the units that you have. And so typically if you're going to play around Corky, you're going to be playing around yordles, bodyguards, enchanters, that sort of thing. And then obviously 2/2/4 Twinshot. And yeah, you just play 2/2/4 Twinshot, just whatever makes sense. If you're playing GP, you're likely going to be playing around mercenaries, or you're just playing GP as your additional Twinshot and like a Lucian build or something like that. So just if you're playing around GP, you're playing around mercs. If you're playing Lucian, you're probably playing around Hextechs. So as I said, this one is very simple. If you want to play Lucian as carry, you're probably going to be playing around Hextech. If not, you're just playing good units. And Jinx, since she is a legendary, typically if you're going to be playing Jinx as your carry, you're just pairing her with good, strong units. So those are going to be 4 cost and 5 cost. Don't think too hard about like building a Twinshot late game build. If you're going to play a 2-star Jinx, the rest of our build does not matter as long as it's good. You know what I mean? So you don't have to think about like making sure you have all these Twinshots, have all these unique synergies. When you're playing a legendary unit, and this is going to be a theme for the rest of the video, just make sure you have their synergies in, and don't really worry about the rest. Just play good units. That is good TFT. And the other thing I'll talk about real quick is because this will come up later. I'm not going to be talking about these really unique traits that factor into legendary units, because that'll be something I talk about in the unit guide video. I want to talk about each of them, but the only one I will talk about is rival. Basically, you get this bonus where Jinx gains attack speed bonus. She has attack speed bonus for takedowns, but she doesn't get this if she plays with Vi. So if you played set 6, she needed this bonus to play. You needed to play with Vi to get this bonus, but now you play without Vi. You know, going with the lore. So so just don't play her with Vi typically. Cool. Other than that, just play good units. All right, so yeah, we're not going to talk about Transformer because that is Jace. That is just purely Jace's thing, and we'll talk about Jace later. So now we're going to talk about snipers. We have Caitlyn, Ashe, Misfortune, Jhin, and Zeri. Okay, so let's just get into it. So snipers, just like Twinshot, where it's another one of those traits where you typically only run as 2, and then you can run 4 or 6 in very unique scenarios, playing around augments, that sort of thing, or if that's just what you're hitting. But typically you're going to be playing around 2 whenever you play sniper for the most part. So let's just get through them. Caitlyn is usually like a very decent early game carry or a splashable unit. If you don't know what splash means, I'm going to be saying a lot. Basically, it just means something you can conveniently fit into your board that gives you a lot of power without like kind of really going out of your way to do it. I'll give some better examples later, but Caitlyn, you kind of splash her in your early game to get like Enforcer, to get Sniper, stuff like that, or you can play her as your primary carry. So she pairs very well with Bruisers. Pairs very well with Bruisers as those are the most Enforcers. And then I don't know what her reroll build will be this set. Her reroll build that she worked in previously got deleted from the game. So if you're playing around Caitlyn as just a as just a bridge unit to get you to later in the game, typically playing around Bruisers and Enforcers. And if you're going to play Caitlyn as a carry, I don't know what her reroll build is at this time, but, you know, whatever. I don't know what it is, but people will find it. Okay, Ashe. Ashe is a Syndicate and a Sniper. She has very good utility in her ability. Oh, I didn't talk about what Sniper does. Sniper gives you additional damage the further units are away from you. Don't worry about calculating the damage, like the 8% bonus, 16%, 30%. It's just, you want your snipers far away from the enemies. They deal more damage to enemies far away from them. That's all you really need to know. Okay, Ashe. Ashe over here, she is kind of like a carry / utility unit. Pairs very well with Jhin in the late game. But if you want to play her as a carry, you're just going to pair her with bodyguards, enchanters, and syndicates, because that's just kind of how her tree works. When you see syndicate, it'll make a lot of sense to you. Or you pair her with Jhin, which also pairs with the same board. Misfortune pairs very well with mercs, obviously. If you want to pair her as a carry in the late game, stuff like that. And in the early game, pairs very well with mercs. Obviously, she is a merc. And then if you end up playing her as a carry, typically you play Bruisers with her frontline, because she had just very, very synergistic with Zac. Just works really, really, really well with Zac. So you play around Zac, and then you can build a Bruiser frontline, you know, with like Zac, Sejuani, Vi, gives you Enforcer there, right? Maybe you can have a 4 Enforcer angle and play Caitlyn, but most of the time you'll pair a Jhin in the back line and play some Enchanters with it. So typically with Misfortune, you'll play Bruisers with Jhin, and then plus some Enchanters, because that just makes sense with Jhin and his innates and synergies, stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you can't play her with Bodyguard. She just pairs very well with Zac and that sort of thing. Jhin, same thing as Ashe, pairs very well with Bodyguards and Enchanters, and I can totally see that Ashe is going to be a very important unit to pair with Jhin, as she is a Syndicate. Braum is a Bodyguard that you fit into pretty much every Jhin build, and then you can fit in a Morgana or a Zyra, whether you need Scholar or Enchanter. So I can see Jhin working extremely well with Ashe, so Jin's going to pair very well with Bodyguards, Enchanters, and Syndicates. Okay, Zeri is a legendary unit, so just same rules as Jinx. If you hit a Zeri, you end up start playing around Zeri. Don't focus too hard about Zeri's board. Just make sure you have really good units to pair with Zeri, 4 cost and 5 cost, and just make sure to get Zeri's minimum traits in, meaning that I would like for her to have Debonair in and Sniper. So you'll typically just pair her with Jhin, and Orianna and some better Enchanters and some Bodyguards, right? So you'd be playing around Leona to get Debonair, that sort of thing. So just pairs really well. Bodyguards, Enchanters, Snipers, Jhin, all that good stuff. Just make sure you get her trait in if you want to carry her. Okay, cool. We don't want to talk about that. Scholar. This is a good splash trait to talk about. All right, so our Scholars, this set is going to be Kassadin. How weird is that? Syndra, Zyra, Renata, and Silco. If you guys played last set, Kassadin was a reroll machine. It was probably my most played build was reroll protectors. I liked playing it a lot. Thought it was very fun, very good build. But they deleted it from the game. I'm not certain as to what Kassadin's build will be now. But let's talk about what Scholar does. So your team gains mana every 2 seconds, 5, 10, 20. This is a very good example of a splash trait, which is, you know, a small trait that you can conveniently fit in that is strong in most comps. That is what a splash trait really is. And so that's why you have all of these. Typically, you're going to play 2 or 4, and then you play 6 in those unique situations where your augment permits it, or it just seems really good. Scholars are best paired with, it's kind of interesting. They're really good paired. They pair very well with units with very low mana cost. Think about like a Kali from last set. She has very low mana cost. I don't remember her exact mana cost. I haven't played that set in a while. But she's very good with Scholars because you don't have to build blue buff, and she casts very frequently. But Scholars are also very well paired with units that have very high impact, high mana costs. Think Victor. So if you're playing like a Victor, if once he gets his first cast off, you're gonna either kill the whole board or half the board, right? Or somewhere in between. So Scholars, it's weird because Scholars are very well paired with low mana cost, high mana cost. But obviously fits into every board as well. Kassadin is just going to be a splashable unit you play around in Mutants. I'm not sure. I'm sure he's going to have a reroll build at some point. I'm not sure what that is at this time because, as I said, they deleted his former reroll build. So it might just be Mutants. It might not be some fancy thing, but you know, someone will find it. Syndra is an extremely good utility unit. that you can fit in to almost any build. Very good paired with Debonair and stuff like that. She's very good at protecting your backline, so very good to fit in. Also, there's reroll builds out there, and if you want to play reroll builds, you just play around Sentry. You just play around Debonairs, Bodyguards, and Scholars. Very simple, and play around Talon, that sort of thing. But that's not really what we're talking about. Scholar is one of those traits, and I don't know if I was clear enough about this, fits into every single comp. So Zyra fits in, very good to get your Syndicate in. Renata, very strong unit, going to pair very well with Bruisers, Chemtech, obviously. But Renata, again, one of those units you can fit into every single build if it makes sense, a very strong unit. And Silco doesn't have any special synergies other than Mastermind, but we'll talk about that in the unit guide video. He is just a Scholar and then his own unique trait. So Silco just fits into literally every single build. Don't really need to talk about Scholars very much. Fit them in if it makes sense, or if you hit the units. Like they work really well in every single unit. Innovator, very unique synergy if you've not played TFT before. But if you've played TFT before, any set, then you'll know what I'm talking about when we get to this. So Innovators, so what Innovators do, and I'm not gonna read this whole thing, at 3, 5, and 7, if you have those thresholds met, you will summon an innovation. It'll just be there. It'll be a unit that you can move. You'll have an additional unit called the Innovation, and it's either going to be a Scarab, a Bear, or a Dragon. They all do different things. The Scarab, what it does is it gives you damage reduction on the Scarab and your most targeted unit, so your main tank or whoever's getting targeted at that time. And then also we have Mechanical Bear, which gives your whole team attack speed. It looks like Tibbers, and yeah, it gives your whole team attack speed. Very good. And then the Dragoon, it gives you additional crit damage, and also fears the enemy team. The Dragoon is very, very, very strong. Okay, cool. So let's get through it. So Innovator is typically something called a vertical trait. If you don't know what a vertical trait means, it means you start out with the base synergy, so 3, and then you add on it throughout the game. So you're just going vertically, right? So typically if you play Innovators, you're playing it vertical, or you're just playing it for your early game, or you can play it as a reroll build. So if you end up playing this as a reroll build, you'll reroll Ezreal, you'll reroll Ezreal, Singe, Zillion, and you'll play around a bunch of one costs like Camille, like Twitch, and you'll end up playing around Clockworks, Innovations, and Chemtechs if you want, and Chemtechs if you want to play around this in your early game, and Assassins obviously because you're going to be rerolling Twitch, and then we have Echo who is an assassin here. If you are going to play this as a standard vertical trait, and you want to play the whole game, in the late game, you'll typically be playing 5 and 7 if you want to play this as the base trait. If you end up playing as 3, it's normally just something that it just conveniently fits in. Like you already have an Innovator heart, and you want to play Jace, and you want to play Seraphine, so naturally have it. Other than that, you usually will try to play around 5 and 7 if you keep Innovator in. And so what are some of the best carries and stuff to pair with the 5 and 7? So as you can see here, we have Clockwork, we have Assassin, all that good stuff. So some of the best things to pair with Innovation are things from last set, which are Challengers. Challengers pair very well with this, and the late game just fits in very naturally because we have this Clockwork here, and we can have Camille, who is a Challenger. And then also Challengers benefit very greatly from attack speed bonus and the Dragon. I could see, this was not something from last set, but I could see there being an assassin-based comp around Innovator if you can get the Dragon, but that is not the common thing, and that was not a build last set. But last set, we did not have Echo as an Innovator, so I'm very interested to see if there's going to be some type of Kha'Zix build. So if you any testers out there want to try an assassin build, I could see an angle where you can pair with assassins, but typically the best carries to pair with this were Challengers and Jhin. The reason why Jhin pairs super well with this, obviously a Clockwork right here, and if you're going to be playing the 5 variation, you'll drop Zillion and you'll play, you can drop Zillion, you can play Ori, Jhin. You play the 5 innovation, Jhin has scaling with attack speed. So when he gains attack speed, he gains attack damage. So very good synergistic with the Mechanical Bear for Jhin. And then if you get to the Dragon, Jhin, you typically build crit. So the extra crit amp helps him out quite a bit. So Jhin, so in synopsis, Jhin, Challengers. This wasn't a build last set, but I could see Assassins being an angle because of Echo, so I'm excited to try that variation. Or you can just carry Legendaries or carry your Jace with the 7 Innovator or 5 Innovator. So that is really how you play around Innovators. pretty complicated synergy, and you need to test it a lot before actually taking it into your games. So you've been warned. If you've never played this game before, that one does take some time to learn. Okay, Enchanters. Now this is the stock. This is a stock standard. Every single set of TFT, this synergy exists, whether it's called Enchanter or something else. Enchanters exist. So, and what Enchanters do is they give your team, your whole team, magic resist, and Enchanters, just the Enchanters, gain bonus healing and shielding, on their abilities. So, so even though I said only Enchanters, if Lulu buffs somebody else who's not an Enchanter, they will get the bonus. But it's Lulu getting the, you know what I mean? You get it. I don't need to explain anymore. Okay, so Enchanters are one of those splash traits. Don't really need to talk about this very much. They just fit in to every single build in the game. If it makes sense to play them, if you have room to fit them in, fit in Enchanters, very good units, splashable in every game. Lulu is just an Enchanter you typically play around in the early game because you're going to be playing around Yordles, that sort of thing. Or if you end up 3-starring her, you can play her late game. But typically you don't play Lulu late game unless you are 1v1 versus a magic damage dealer, or 1v1v1 or whatever, or you have a 3-star Lulu. Typically you only play Lulu in the early and mid game. Morgana, as I said, she's going to be a very important unit in this set to when you're playing Bodyguard comps, to have that link between Bodyguard and Syndicate. So for example, if you're playing snipers, Braum, you have Braum, Ashe, Jhin, Ori, Morgana. What a team to have right there. It gives you Syndicate, Enchanter, Sniper. So Syndicate, Enchanter, Sniper, Clockwork. Wow, gonna pair very well in that comp. So it pairs very well with Bodyguards and Syndicate for obvious reasons. Senna is going to be a unit that fits into literally every single build if you want to play around Socialite, because Senna is also a Socialite. So if your Socialite makes sense to play in your build, so easy to splash her in late game. Since she's an Enchanter, that creates a bridge where you can play Morgana, Orianna, very good units. So Senna is going to be a very important unit to the set, to bridging all your comps together. Fits into literally every single comp if you have room for her, room for an Enchanter there or Socialite. So fits in every comp. Ori, she is the highest cost Enchanter, very strong unit, and pairs specifically very well with Jhin, fits very well with Innovators. But she's another one of those, fits in pretty much every comp if it makes sense to run Enchanters. If you're gonna run Enchanters, you're gonna run Ori. So yeah, there you go. Cool. Don't need to talk about that one too much. Enchanters are just really good. All right, Colossus. This is a very unique synergy, and we'll get into this. So if you did not play last set and you're not familiar with this, let's get into it. They did change a little bit from last set. So now Colossus units have additional health as an innate. So this will trigger at the beginning of combat. Colossus gain 800 health. So yeah, the way innate works, if you put them on your board, you will not see it, but once a round starts, you'll see like your Cho'Gath gain 800 health. You know what I mean? Works the same way assassins do. They'll jump at the beginning of combat. Okay, so they get that. The downside of Colossus, of them getting this big stat bonus, is they take up 2 spots on your team. So for example, if you're a level 7, you can only have 6 units on your board if you have a Colossus on there, opposed to if you didn't, you'd be able to have 7, obviously. Cool. The other thing is, if you have 2 Colossus, then both of your Colossus or Colossi, whatever, they take 25% less damage, so they do have reduced damage if you play multiple of them. Typically, you only play multiple of them if they make just a ton of sense, or if you're carrying one of your Colossus. Other than that, most of the time you'll only be playing 1 Colossus. Or unless you have a bunch of Colossus augments or whatever, just whatever makes sense. Actually, I think they deleted armor plating. I don't remember. Anyways, okay, cool. Cho'Gath is a unit that you only play if you're going to play around mutants, or you are carrying your Cho'Gath. In the late game, you will almost only play Cho'Gath if you are carrying Cho'Gath, or he is a very big cornerstone, or your off carry, your main tank. In the late game, you do not, if you're playing mutants, you do not want to be playing Cho'Gath unless he is a very important unit, because he takes up 2 slots. All he does is bite people. So just understand that. But if you're going to be playing Cho'Gath, if you want to play him as a carry, he can stay in your board the whole game. But typically, if you're playing around Cho'Gath, you're just playing around, it's very simple. Play around Bruisers, play around Mutants, that sort of thing. Alistair, neat unit because he doesn't have any synergies that kind of bring him together. You know how Scion in last set was a Protector, Imperial, and a Colossus? Well, he doesn't have 3 tags. He only has 2. He's just a Colossus and a Hextech. Obviously, he's going to pair very well with Hextechs, right? Does that mean he only plays with those boards? No, he's going to be a very strong frontliner. But the best boards he's going to pair with is going to be Strikers and Hextechs. The reason why he is a Hextech, and the reason why he pair very well with Strikers is because there are 2 Hextech Strikers, Jarvan the 4th and Sivir. I could see a world where he is the most standard frontliner with Strikers. He'd be very good with them. But other than that, he's going to fit well in any board. So the cool thing about Colossus are, if you don't hit anything, like you're rolling, you're trying to hit a Braum, you don't hit a Braum, you know, you're trying to play Jhin, right? And you're trying to build like a Bodyguard Enchanter build. You don't hit a Braum, but you hit an Alistar 2-star. You can just sack your Bodyguard frontline and just play solo frontline Alistar. You know what I mean? So Alistar is going to be one of those units that can fit into every single board if you need him to, but fits most naturally into the Striker and Hextech tree. Okay, Galio, same. Everything I just said for Alistar applies to Galio, except for the Hextech Striker thing. He fits into every comp if you need him. Other than that, you'll play him with Braum usually if you end up wanting to play him and you need extra CC. And if you want the Socialite and you have room for him on your team. You play him if you have room for him on your team. There are some carry Galio builds, but Riot has been very clear they don't want him to be a carry. That every time he's a carry, they nerf him. Every time he seems decent as a carry on a patch, they continue to nerf him. They really want him to be this just like really tank CC god. So you add him into builds if you need more CC, need more frontline, or occasionally you can play him as a carry and all that good stuff. Okay, I want to make sure we don't miss any. I don't think we've missed any. So let's go into challengers. Challengers, very simple trait. So what challengers do is you gain attack speed at the beginning of combat, or just you gain attack speed in general. And then whenever you get a takedown, so upon scoring a takedown, which is, yeah, a takedown, challengers dash forward and double the bonus for 2.5 seconds. So they double whatever their existing attack speed bonus, they double it for 2.5 seconds, and they dash with an auto attack range. So Draven won't like dash from the back line all the way to their face or something like that. He'll just dash to within so that he can attack them if he wasn't in range with them. You know what I mean? So all that good stuff. All right, cool. So challengers. Challengers are typically played in I'd say 2 different ways. They're played as, or 3 different ways, I guess. They're played as just like an early game trait and you're just bridging to get to the late game. You can also play them as a reroll build, and we'll talk about that in a second. Or you are just carrying one of the late game challengers and you play either 2, 4, or 6, and all that good stuff. There's actually a lot of ways to play challengers. I don't know why I said there's 2. There's so many ways to play challengers. Okay, so challengers is one of those ones that you can play as a vertical trait, and that is not one of the things I just said. And so that's why I was like, wait, you can play challengers so many different ways. Is one of those ones you can play as a vertical trait. You can go from 2, 4 to 6 to 8, all that good stuff. Typically, challenger is balanced in a way that 6 and 8 is very strong because it is hard to get. But the downside is you don't have any utility units. So if you end up playing challengers, you want to play vertical, you just go 6 and 8 and try to add some utility units with them, which utility just CC, strong units that give you shields, that sort of thing. Those types of units. You just pair those if you want to play 6 and 8 vertical. You just try to fit in as many of those as you can with them because the units naturally don't have a lot of utility except for Quinn is the utility, is the only utility challenger in this build. Unless you want to count Kaisa. If you put a Morello on her, she can be a Morello bot. Anyway, so yeah, you play it as a vertical trait. That's all good. If you want to play this as just a bridging trait, you just play around 2 challengers and you just build comps around whatever makes sense. So if you want to play Quinn, Quinn Camille early game, maybe you're going to be playing around Mercs. Maybe you're going to be playing around Innovators, Clockworks, that sort of thing. If you want to just play bridging tool and play around Warwick, then you're going to be playing on Chemtech, Bruisers, that sort of thing. If you want to play reroll, you'll be playing around these 3 units for the most part, which is Quinn, Warwick, and Trinamere, which means you're going to pair very well with Chemtechs and Bruisers because Zac is going to be a very important unit to this build as Warwick, Trinamere are both Chemtech. You fit in Zac and then fit in other Bruisers. If you want to play around Mercs, that's fine to play around Mercs if stage 3 stuff like that to gain some econ because Quinn right here is a mercenary. So we can do that. If you want to play this as a late game trait and you're not verticaling, you're not rerolling, you're just going to play around Draven or Kaisa, then Draven is going to just make sure you want to fit him with Debonairs, obviously. So he's going to fit very well with Bodyguards and Bodyguard, Scholar, Enchanter, that sort of thing. Very standard comp. Draven has a problem that he has to hit frontline because he can only hit 1 target at a time. So a lot of times you can benefit from building a stally a stall type build, maybe not a full stall build, but you can make like a stall Draven build. Fits very well with stall comps. As I said, he does have to hit frontline. So bodyguards, enchanters, scholars, that sort of thing. Units that can buy a lot of time for Draven so he can get his damage off. Or you can make a combat very fast by playing a lot of challengers. So either play challenger vertical, reroll with Chemtechs, or you just build a comp in the late game around your late game carry, which it's Draven, Debonair's, bodyguards, stall, that sort of thing. Kaisa follows the same rules of all legendaries. If you want to play Kaisa as a carry, just make sure you have really good units around her. And if you can fit and if you can fit her synergies in like Challenger and Mutant, that's amazing. But you don't always have to have Mutants. But typically you do want to play 2 Challenger. But again, Kaisa is so good that you don't even have to play that. Just make sure you have good units with her for the most part. Cool. All right, well, let's get down to Bruisers. Let's get down to business. All right, so we got Alawi, Rek'Sai, Sejuani, Cho'Gath, Zach, Vi, and Tam Kinch. Okay, cool. Let's talk about these. Alawi is typically, what does Bruiser do? Sorry. Your whole team gains health, and then Bruisers gain double the bonus. So you can see 2, 4, 6, and 8 right there. Remember, Bruisers gain double the bonus, but it is a team-wide buff. Very cool. And past iterations of Bruisers, Brawlers, that sort of thing, your team did not get the buff. I love that your whole team gets the buff, just not as good. Alawi is a Bruiser that you typically only play in the early and mid game. You do not want to be playing Alawi late game unless you're doing some weird Merc shenanigans or playing like a Bruiser vertical. Typically, you do not want her in your build. I could see a patch where Bruiser vertical is very good because Vi is a very good carry, very good unit. So I could see you playing Bruiser as a vertical trait, but at the time of making this video, there isn't really a Bruiser vertical comp. There wasn't one in set 6, so we're not going to talk about that too much, but be looking out for a Bruiser vertical where you play a duo carry, Vi and Tahm Kench, very similar to set 4 when you played Shyvana carry with Set as your late game carry. Be looking out for that. That turns into a build. But let's talk about some of these units, some of the best pairings. Okay, yeah, as I said, Alawi, mostly just an early game unit, synergy bot. Don't worry about Alawi too much. After that, we have Rek'Sai and Sejuani. Rek'Sai is a striker and a mutant. So obviously if you want to play around mutants, that sort of thing, play Rek'Sai. But Rek'Sai is a mutant and a striker. Striker is the more important part. And then Sejuani is a Hextech. There are 2 Hextech strikers. There is Jarvan IV and Sivir. So Bruisers pair very well with strikers. Very, very, very well with strikers. So just know that. And as well as there are 2 Enforcer Bruisers. So that's why running a full Bruiser frontline, like a 4 Bruiser frontline, actually works pretty well this set, opposed to last set. 4 Bruiser frontlines were not very good. She lacked utility like Enforcer and CC and stuff like that. Cool. Pairs very well with those. All right, let's talk about Zach. I talked about Zach a lot here. Zach pairs very well with MF specifically, just because he pulls people together and then MF ults on top of them, that sort of thing. So Zach pairs very well with MF and also pairs very well with the other Bruisers and Challengers. So Challengers pair very well with Bruisers because we have Tryndamere and Warwick. So if you're playing like a reroll variation, those guys pair very well with these guys. Cool. Vi is either a carry, she's a tank, she kind of does it all, fits into every single comp. I'll talk more about her on the unit guide video, but Vi fits in every single comp and an Enforcer. So she fits very well with Bruisers, obviously. Fits very well with Jace as he is an Enforcer in the late game. But Vi is one of those units you can run her as a de facto frontliner if you're just rolling, like maybe you want to play Bodyguards or something like that, but you hit a Vi 2, let's play a Vi 2, baby. So she doesn't have to be in this Bruiser-esque build. You could just play Vi plus Sejuani and you're good to go as like a standard frontline pair good units around there. I had a game the other day where I was trying to play around Bodyguards and stuff, but I hit a Vi 2 and a Braum 2, but I didn't hit anything else. It was kind of awkward. So I just ended up running a Braum 2-star with a Blitz 2-star and ran a Sejuani and a Vi 2-star. And I had this weird Bodyguard Bruiser comp, but it worked out because I had Enforcer and Vi does so much and Braum does so much. Blitz is a good unit. So Vi typically just pair with Sejuani, you're good to go. But if you want to play a lot of Bruisers, that's fine too. Tahm Kench, one of those units, fits into every single build. He is a legendary, very strong unit. Pairs very well. If there's a carry patch for Tahm Kench, pairs very well with Socialites. But other than that, Tahm Kench is a lot like Vi. If it makes sense to play him, you just play him and don't worry about the rest of his synergies. Like you can make him stronger by putting in Bruisers, that sort of thing. But it doesn't really matter that much. Just play good units and don't really worry about the build too much. Okay, cool. Bruiser, Bodyguard. Finally got Bodyguard. Been talking about it so much. I should have started with Bodyguard. A Bodyguard and Bruisers. Those are like the front lines, you know what I mean? The easiest front lines to work around. So what Bodyguards do is Bodyguards have increased armor. So just the Bodyguards doesn't work like Bruisers. Just the Bodyguards get enforced armor or get better armor. And then Bodyguards gain a shield and a taunt right as combat begins, forcing them to attack the Bodyguard. So as you can see, it's 2, 4, 6, 8. You gain armor and shield as it goes through. As long as you have the trait active, you will get the taunt. So just know that. Anyways, cool. So let's get through it. So our early game Bodyguards are Darius, Poppy, and Blitzcrank. And Blitzcrank is one of those ones you can play the entire game. Very good unit. Cool, yo. So in the early game, if you want to play around these Bodyguards, you're typically going to be playing around Yordles and Syndicates are going to be some of the easiest things to do. But typically in the early game, you just play whatever frontliner you have 2 stars. So if you have a 2-star Darius, you can play any backline, but pairs very well with Yordles. And Syndicates. And then if you're going to be playing around Poppy and Blitz, obviously pairs very well with Yordles, Scraps, that sort of thing. And you'll just play these as bridging tools to get to your late game Bodyguards. But again, Blitz can last the test time. Very good unit. Makes people have to position weirdly. And pairs very well with Braum, as you can pull someone next to Braum and Braum will hit them in their knockup. Very good synergistic with that. Okay, late game. This is how you play Bodyguards, guys. This is very easy. Typically, you're going to play 2 Bodyguards most of the time. But sometimes, if it makes a lot of sense, you'll play 4 Bodyguards. Or if you have a lot of, emblems or whatever, you play 4 Bodyguards. And then occasionally you can play 6 Bodyguard as a vertical. But that is like very specific to patches, very specific to like prismatics you get and stuff like that. But typically, it's going to be just 2 and then sometimes 4. And that's about it. You're going to play Braum every single time. 99% of the time, you will play Braum. So just know that. Braum is the cornerstone of Bodyguards. He is so good. He is such a good unit. He does everything. And he pairs so well because he is a Syndicate. And Syndicates have a very cool tree this year where they have an Enchanter, they have a Scholar, and they have a Sniper. So it is so easy to fit these in every comp. Even if you're not playing like Jhin, which is the easiest one to fit in because you play Jhin, Ashe, Braum, Morgana, Ori. It gives you Enchanter, Syndicate, Bodyguard, Sniper, Clockwork. So good. But even if you're not playing around that, you could totally just play Braum, Zyra, Morgana. And then you just pair a Scholar. You just pair a Scholar, Enchanter, and then X carry, whatever carry that is. You know what I mean? So it could be Syndra. It could be Syndra. You could be playing Syndra, Leona, Draven. And that gives you Debonair, Scholar, Bodyguard. So just think about Braum. Braum is the core of this build. Doesn't mean you have to play Braum every game, but you want to play Braum every game. You understand? Okay. Anyways, and you just pair Braum with any of these ones, whichever makes sense. Blitz, very good unit. If you don't know what to do, pair with Blitz. Just a really good unit. Has very good traits with Scrap, all that good stuff. Very good. Leona, if you just want a real thick, you just want to buy time. You want to, I just realized what I said. Anyways, you want a real thick, if you want to buy time, you're making a stall comp. Leona is great for that job. So Leona is going to be very best in that situation. And then Galio, if you just need a lot more CC, you have an extra team slot where you can sacrifice this. Maybe you're playing around Socialite. Then you pair him with that. So it's just really get Braum +1. And then in those situations where 4 Bodyguards make sense, there's a lot of AD in the lobby. Or if you have an augment that gives you more Bodyguards, or you have Stand By Me, all that good stuff. Then you could just play Braum +2 or Braum +3, play all of them. But yeah, that's Bodyguards. Very easy to play around. Everyone should know how to play around Bodyguards if you want to be a good TFT player, for sure. All right, now we got Assassin. Assassin, everyone's favorite trait. No, love them or hate them, Assassins are at every single synergy, one of those cornerstone ones. They have to be in the game or the meta would be so stagnant. Every single patch will be front to back. Every single patch will be stall. So that's why they have to be in the game, love them or hate them. And some patches these will be strong, some patches they won't. So what do Assassins do? They have an innate, just like Colossus. So at the very beginning of combat, they will jump to the backline depending on wherever they are. So if they're here, Talon will jump to the corresponding hex on the other side. Okay, coolio. So what our assassins are: Nocturne, Twitch, Talon, Echo, Kha'Zix. And the other thing they do, they get additional crit chance and additional crit damage. So the more you play, the more damage they do. Typically you play assassins, you can play them at any of these levels. So really just depends on the build, the circumstances. You'll either play 2, 4, or 6, whatever makes sense with your augments and the circumstances of the game. A lot of other synergies aren't like that, right? Like Sniper, you'll almost always play 2, but sometimes you'll play 4. But Assassin's one of those ones where you don't know. You could go into a game and it might be 2, 4, 6. You really don't know. Very important to play flexible when you play Assassins, just from my experience. All right, so let's get through Assassins. They're kind of weird. They're one of those ones that just whoever you're carrying is what you're going to be playing around. So if you want to play like a Hextech reroll build, or you're going to be like carrying a Nocturne, if there's a patch where you carry Nocturne, right now he's currently like a utility, kind of an off carry thing, then you'll play around Hextech. If you're playing Twitch as your carry, you're playing around Chemtech and Innovators typically. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's just how it works. Just trust me. You'll see if you get in there, if you're trying to reroll a Twitch, you'll notice that a lot of Innovator units fit very well with Twitch, Innovator Chemtech. If you're playing Talon, you're going to be playing around Debonair reroll. So you'll be playing around, you'll probably be playing around Bodyguards like Leona, because your other Debonairs are probably be Leona and Syndra. And so we'll play around Bodyguards, Scholars, and Assassins. Obviously, he doesn't benefit from Scholars, but your other units do. You'll reroll all of those if you want to play around him. Echo, one of those units who's just extremely good. He is the utility unit of Assassins. I would argue that Nocturne is actually another utility unit, but he is the best utility unit as Echo. Is an Innovator, so you just splash him in wherever it makes sense. And if you want to play around Echo, he is not a carry. But Echo fits into every single Assassin build for the most part because he is the utility unit. And if you want to play around Kha'Zix, then you're playing around Mutants and whatever makes sense around there. So you're probably going to be playing around Mutants and Bruisers because there are 2 Mutant Bruisers. So yeah, you're probably going to be playing around that or whatever makes sense. He is a 4 cost, so if you just have really good units to play around him, that's fine as well. Don't need to talk about Assassins too much. Just whichever one you're carrying is going to be the units you're playing around. Typically pairs very well with Bodyguards. One thing I will say about Assassins, if you've never played around Assassins before, if you're playing a frontliner, let's pretend Echo is Braum. This Echo. You don't want to have your frontliner all the way up here. You typically want to have your primary frontliner on second row or all the way on the back, because when your Assassins jump at the beginning of the fight, if the enemy team can target a frontliner, then their team won't move. But if they can't target a frontliner, they will walk up to try to target them. And what that will cause is that all the units spread out a little bit more. They declump, and that's usually better for Assassins. Sometimes it's not so good for Twitch because as soon as your frontliner dies, they will turn and start killing your people. They will not start attacking frontliners. So Twitch is usually the exception that sometimes you don't want to do this strategy, but also with Twitch, it is good as well. So yeah, just remember if you're playing Assassins, you want your frontliners be a little bit further back so that your Assassins can kind of like, get in that ass, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, sort that out. We got the last one on this one, and then we can go over to Origins. Origins should probably be a little bit easier since we've already talked about a lot of this stuff. Okay, so for Arcanist, we have, or Arcanists, whatever you want to say. I say Arcanists, they are practitioners of the arcane. Don't know why it would be said any other way, but I get shit for that sometimes. Anyways, we got Brand, Ziggs, Swain, Malzahar, Vex, Ari, and Victor. So Arcanist is one of those ones you can play as a vertical comp, or it's going to be one of those things where whoever you're carrying is going to be how the rest of your comp shapes out. Okay, so what do Arcanists do? Your team gains ability power, and then at certain tiers, your team gains ability power, and then your Arcanists gain additional. So if you look at 2, just your whole team gains 20 ability power, very similar to Dusk if you guys played step 4. At 4, your team gains 20 ability power, and Arcanists gain 40, and that's kind of the trend it goes the rest of the way. So 6 is very similar to 4. Team gains ability power, Arcanists gain that ability power plus more, and then at 8, your whole team gains 145 ability power. Typically 8 Arcanists is a huge bait and was not meta a single patch of last set unless it's meta right now, which is this is the only patch I'm not playing of last set. So all right, cool. So this is a synergy you can play as a vertical. You can play 2, 4, or 6. It really just depends on the situation. But a lot of times you'll be playing 2 or 4, and then only 6 when it makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of really good augments like Runic Shield, stuff like that. Yeah, Arcanists pair very well with good units. I know that sounds kind of weird, but if you play 2 or 4, pairs very well with Scholars as you are ability-based units, so you're not auto-attacking, so you do want to cast a lot more. Pairs very well with Scholars, and then anybody who can really buy a lot of time from the cast ability, so like Braum, like enchanters, that sort of thing. So bodyguards, enchanters, scholars pair very well with those. Or you run it as a vertical synergy. That's what you need to know. Okay, now let's talk about if you want to carry any of these units. Ziggs is typically not a unit that you carry. Sometimes you do 3-star them, you feed them to your Tahm Kench. Or, I mean, you can run them as a carry, but typically you don't want to be running a 3-star Ziggs as your primary DPS in the late game ever. You don't want to do that for the most part. I'm sure there'll be a patch where it's fine. But Ziggs should never be your primary DPS in the late game, so we're not going to build a comp around him. Although you can build a comp around him in the early game with yordles. Even if you 3-star him, you can feed him to a Tahm Kench. Or you can just playing 6 yordles. But when you play 6 yordles, you're kind of carrying like 4 different units. So that's why I say you never want a primary DPS Ziggs in the late game. It's just not how it is. Okay, Brand. Obviously going to pair very well with other Debonair units. Brand needs a lot of time to get his damage off, so he will pair very well with stall. So bodyguards and enchanters are the best thing to stall for him. And so obviously you will pair him with a Leona, and your other Debonair, if you're going to be playing 3, is most likely going to be Syndra, as she is the best utility unit. Gives you a scholar as well. Scholars buy a lot of time. So anything that buys time, Brand takes his damage. Brand takes a little bit to get his damage off, so probably bodyguards, enchanters, scholars, that sort of thing. Swain pairs very well with Hextech, obviously. And there's also a very good frontliner if you end up playing like reroll Arcanists and you like 3-star Vex, you can 3-star Swain as well. You have very beefy Arcanist frontline, so decent frontliner for the comp. Other than that, he pairs very well with Hextech. If you're doing like a Hextech reroll build, fits very well into that. He's a 2-cost, so if you're rerolling for a Sejuani 3-star and a Lucian 3-star and Swain 3-star, pairs very well with that. So he just goes in the builds that his tags suggest, Arcanist and Hextech. It's really all he really fits into. So Malzahar, very good mid-game unit, very good mid-game, early game unit, very good splashable unit in the late game. Yeah, if you're playing him as a carry, you might be playing mutants, and you really just play whatever makes sense. So you're probably going to be playing Bruisers. If you're playing Malzahar as your late game carry, just because it's easiest to fit in all those traits. But other than that, if you're not carrying him, he's just a very solid unit to play with your Ari, your Victor, whoever else you're carrying. Adds some nice damage to your team, but you know, unless you're primarily carrying him, he is just added to your team. But if you're primarily carrying him, you're probably playing Mutants and Bruisers for the most part. But you can honestly play a lot of different stuff. You don't have to play Mutant when you play Malzahar. Anyways, Vex, very good frontliner. She's just going to fit into this build. Anytime you're playing 4 or 6, I would say you would never play Vex as your 2 Arcanists in the late game. You would only play her as 2 Arcanists like in the early game. If you could get yordles, she could in the early game. But Vex starts to have a lot of diminishing value. Anything below 4 is just bad. She needs a lot of ability power to be tanky. Vex is specifically a very good frontliner if you're going to be playing vertical. If you have Runic Shield, very strong with that. Maybe that got removed from the game though. I don't know. Runic Shield, very OP. Okay, Ari is a Syndicate. She is a Syndicate. She is a she's a Syndicate and an Arcanist. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Anyway, so she pairs very well with bodyguards, enchanters, and scholars. She takes a lot of time to get her damage off. She does ramp throughout the fight, so you want to make sure she has a lot of stall. She's kind of like Nico from set 4.5. So she's kind of like the stall AP carry in this set. So she does take a lot of time to ramp. So we want to pair her with Syndicates, bodyguards, enchanters, scholars, things that buy you time. Victor, same idea. He takes a lot of time to get his cast off, but when he does, it hits like a truck, right? He takes a little bit of time to ramp. He pairs very well with his own synergies like Chemtech. If you wanted up playing around Chemtech and play around Bruisers, you know, you obviously play scholars with that. You'd play Renata, Zach. Zach Victor would be your Chemtechs. You can do that to get some more stall, get some scholars, you know, easy scholar splash right there. But you don't have to. He's a legendary unit. So he just needs a lot of time and he needs to be able to gain his mana. Very good with Socialite. Very good with bodyguards and enchanters as you do buy time. So you do not have to play Chemtech when you play Victor. But yeah, pairs very well with Socialites and anything that buy him time. Or you can just play around Chemtechs, obviously, because Chemtechs are pretty decent at stalling time as well. All right, that is it. Now we have to go on the Origins. Origins. Okay, we're not going to talk about Yordle Lord. That is specifically to Vagar, so we're not going to talk about that. Yordles. Wait, oh, okay. I was like, wait, why aren't all the Yordles here? Okay, Yordles is the econ trait for this set. And if you played last set, then this was in there as well. Exactly the same from last set. If you guys played last set, that's all you need to know. So what you need to know about yordles, at 3 yordles, you gain a yordle portal opens at the beginning of the round, and it adds a unit, or adds a copy of a yordle unit. So you can use this in 2 ways. Oh, and then at 6, you have lower mana cost. So your abilities cost less mana. So obviously you get a lot of stuff off. You can play yordles in 2 different ways. The most common way to play yordle is played as an econ trait. So you just fit in 3 yordles, and you play a weak early game, you gain so much gold, and then you either spike in the mid game or the late game. That is the primary way that you play yordle. So you just play like something like, I don't know, Ziggs, Lulu, Poppy, and then you just build a comp around that. So you play like Bodyguards, Enchanters, Arcanists, stuff like that, and then you just pivot out completely in the late game to something completely different. Whatever your items suggest and whatever the game is going towards, that's what you do. Now, if you want to play as a 6 unit trait, then you just play these units. And then whoever you're trying to carry, you add a carry with, you add a unit, so add a unit with them that makes sense. So for example, if you're carrying Gnar, then you'd probably want to have a striker. So you just add a striker with it. If you're carrying this guy, carrying Corky, then you add a one of those things, Twinshot. And then as I said, you don't really want to carry one of these in the late game. And then when you have 6, when you 3-star all of your units, if you've never played Yordle, then you can get Vhagar. He's not listed here because he is not a real unit in the game. But if you get all of these 3-starred, then you'll start spawning a Vhagar, and you just carry a Vhagar. He does take up a spot on your board, and he is technically not a Yordle. So he's technically not a Yordle, so you still need to play all 6 of these units. You need to be level 7 to get that bad boy in. So if you want to play as 6 Yordles, it's typically a reroll build. You either reroll on 4, 5, 6, or 7, any of those levels. You just got to learn how to play Yordles. I'm not going to explain to you how to play Yordles and why you would level at each of those intervals or roll at each of those intervals. But that is how you kind of do it. Cool. These are the people. Don't need to talk about that anymore. Yordles, you will probably play every game that you can. Very good for econ. Very, very good. Okay, Syndicate. We've talked a lot about Syndicate. Man, they made Syndicate so good this set because you can fit it into every single board. So we talked about this a lot already. Syndicates, if you're going to play Syndicates, you're typically going to be playing around Bodyguards. You're going to be playing around Bodyguards, Enchanters, Scholars, because those can fit into every single build pretty much. You know, we got our Braum for our Bodyguard, we got Morgana for our Enchanter, and we got Zyra for our Scholar. So fit this into every build, and obviously fits into the build with each other. You can play this as a vertical trait, meaning you can play 3, 5, or 7. That works fine, but most of the time we'll be playing Syndicate. It's going to be a splash at 3 Syndicate. They made this such a good splash trait. You can probably play this pretty much every single game in the late game if it makes sense for a splashable trait. And if you're playing Jhin, this is so easy to fit in because as I said, we have Ashe, who's a sniper, so you pair Jhin, that gives you sniper. We have Morgana, who's an enchanter. You pair Orianna, which gives you Clockwork and Enchanter. And then we have Braum, who is the best frontliner to run with Jhin. So that gives you Braum, and then you just play like Blitz or Leona or Galio, and that gives you Bodyguard. So good with Jhin. But yeah. And then Ahri, same idea, man. You have Ahri, who's a Syndicate. You have Morgana, who's an Enchanter. And then you have Braum, who is this. Or if you want to play a Zyra for Scholar instead of Enchanter, same idea. So good. I feel like I've already talked so much about Syndicate. Don't need to talk about it anymore. So good. Okay, Striker. We got Jarvan the 4th, Rek'Sai, Gnar, Aurelia, and Sivir. Admittedly, this is the least. Admittedly, Striker is the trait I played the least. Talking about the late game carries, I played a lot of reroll Strikers because the build is very similar to reroll Protectors, and you know that's kind of my jam. So. Anyways, cool. Strikers, what do Strikers do? They gain attack damage. That's it. So at intervals of 2, 4, and 6 currently, 30, 65, 110 at the time we made this video. Anyways, so Striker you can play as a vertical trait. Very good as a vertical trait. Or you can just play it as a 2-unit trait or a 4-unit trait, depending on your build. So if you want to play around reroll Strikers, you're going to carry your Rek'Sai. Then you're going to be playing around Hextech. You're going to be rerolling all of your Hextech units, all of your early game Hextech units. And then you'll add in Mutant, which would be Malzahar and Kha'Zix. So your build will be Hextech, 4 Striker, Mutant, and Mutant, Assassin, and Arcanists. Actually, that's just kind of how it shakes up. That's the build right now, but you don't need to memorize all that stuff or anything like that. The point I'm trying to make is Rek'Sai, if you want to play as a carry, pairs very well with Hextech. as there are a lot of strikers, and then strikers obviously. Gnar is unique because he is a Socialite, a Yordle, and a striker. Very good unit to play around. Can fit into every striker comp. Gnar can fit into. So he's a very good glue unit because he is a Socialite. That's why he's so good to play in all these. And also you can play him for econ in the early game, or you can play Gnar as a carry, like in a Yordle build or in a striker 3 Yordle build for econ. I can definitely see patches where he will be a carry. But other than that, just a very good unit, very good tags. Aurelia, if you want to play her as a late game carry, obviously pairs super well with Sivir. So likely you're going to be playing around some Hextechs, as you will pair her with Sivir, and then naturally you'd want to pair Jarvan and stuff like that. So naturally going to pair very well with Hextechs, as these are both 4 costs, but also she is a scrap. So I could see angles where there's like a scrap vertical build where she's a carry, or you just pair her with bodyguards like Blitzcrank, who is a scrap, and stuff like that. So I could see a lot of angles where she could be very good paired with like bodyguards and enchanters because of the scrap element to her build. But other than that, going to pair very well with strikers, and if she pairs well with strikers, she probably pairs very well with Hextech units. So be looking out for that. Socialite, yeah, I feel like I should have done Origins first, because I feel like I've been referencing the Origins a lot more than I've been referencing the traits over here, the classes. But oh well, here we are. Okay, Socialite. So Socialites, here we are. We have Gnar, Senna, Seraphine, and Galio. I feel like I've already really explained how to play these. So I just talked about Gnar, so don't worry about Gnar. But what Socialite does is it reveals a spot on the hex, or a hex on your board. So one of these ones, and it's randomly selected every single game, and every single player will have the same Socialite hex that game. The only time there'll be additional Socialite hex is if they have something like Duet or something like that. I believe that was removed from the game. But if it's not, then that's a thing. But anyways, there's a Socialite hex picked at the beginning of the game. You don't know what it is until you start playing a Socialite, but it's the same for everyone. That's what you need to know. Okay, so whoever is standing on that hex at the beginning of combat, at 1, you gain bonus damage, 2, you gain mana per second, and 3, you gain health, or gain healing. So you gain Omnivamp, and then at 5, all the bonuses double. I'm not sure if that's going to stay in the game. That was not in last set, so we'll see if that stays in the game. Very excited about that though. Anyways, we already talked about Gnar. We really talked a lot about Senna. Senna, you can fit into literally every single build if you want to play Socialite, every single build. Seraphine, she is an Innovator. Innovator, all that good stuff. And then Galio is a really beefy frontliner CC unit. Socialites, if the hex makes sense for you, play Socialite. If it doesn't, don't play it. That's it. That's it. Socialite's really simple. If the hex makes a lot of sense and Socialite's good on that patch, then play the Socialite units in your builds. Fits in literally every single build. Okay, Scrap. Scrap is such a unique synergy, isn't it? If you don't know, if you didn't play last set. Okay, so what Scraps do, I'm just going to read this because Scrap does a lot of stuff. At the start of combat, components held by a Scrap champion turn into full items for the rest of combat. Also, your team gains a shield for each component, your whole team, for each component equipped by your team, including those that are part of a full item. So that means if you put a rod onto a Ziggs at the beginning of the round, if you have Scrap active and you meet the conditions, it will turn into a completed item. So it can turn into like a Rabadon's Death Cap, right? That Rabadon's Death Cap will count towards your Scrap shield. So it'll count it as 2 components, even though you only actually have 1. Do you understand? Okay, cool. So the intervals are 2, 4, and 6. So at 2, only 1 component will turn into a full item. So even if you're playing 2 Scrap and you have a rod and a sword here, it'll only pick one of them to upgrade. You know what I'm saying? So only one will upgrade. At 4, 3 components can upgrade. And then at 6, every single component on a Scrap unit can upgrade, as long as you didn't complete the item, obviously. Okay, so Scrap is a trait that is very good to play around early game at 2 and 4, very strong in the early game. And then also, if you end up having like augments, they give you 6 Scrap, that sort of thing. Very strong trait to play in the mid game to kind of get you fast 9, kind of get you to your late game stuff. So you can play Scrap as a vertical, but a lot of times you play Scrap as a splash trait for 2 Scrap because you're going to be playing around Blitz. Very easy to play Blitz in a lot of builds, so you can splash it in. Other than that, if you want to play Scrap, you play in the early game, play around an Ezreal, you play around a Ziggs, you play around Blitz, and if you end up having like Scrap augments, you play 4 Scrap, very strong in the early game, very strong in the mid game, and you can play that as a vertical into 6 Scrap. But for the most part, Scrap is played as a 2-unit synergy, just a splash trait, and you just pair them with whoever you're going to carry. So if you're playing Aurelia, you'll probably play 2 Scrap, unless you're going to be playing that vertical trait at 4 and 6. Playing Jinx, same idea, 2 Scrap. But yeah, you can play this as a vertical trait. I feel like I don't really need to explain this anymore. Very nuanced to what's going on in your game and the patch cycle, but very good to splash into your comp. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm going in reverse order. Talked about Socialite. Already talked about Rival, which is just Vi and Jinx. We talked about Mutant so much, but I have to go through it, obviously. Mutant, very special trait. So our mutants we got here are Kaisa, Kha'Zix, Malzahar, Cho'Gath, Rek'Sai, and Kassadin. Okay, Mutant changes every single game. Every single game, it changes. So at the very beginning of the game, you need to check what the mutant is. And the way you check what the mutant is whoever has a Kassadin, right-click and hover over the mutant, and it'll tell you what it does. Okay, so at 3 and 5, you gain different bonuses, and it's different for each of them. I'm gonna like give a brief overview of each of them. So Cybernetic, if it's Cybernetic, what Cybernetic does is it gives you attack damage and health if you have an item equipped to your mutant. That's what it does. Voracious Appetite is Darkstar from old sets. So when a unit dies, it gives your mutant units bonus attack damage and AP for each ally that dies. It works on target dummies as well, so very good paired with target dummies. Voidborn, it gives you Predators from set 3, which is you'll execute a target below a certain threshold. I believe it's 20% at this time. And then if you get the 5-unit trait, you get you deal true damage. And there's actually a 7-unit trait to Mutant now, by the way, unless they removed it. And it just scales it up more. Hyper Adrenal, it gives you Blade Master, which gives you a chance to double attack. It's very similar to Twinshot. So it basically gives you Twinshot on your guys, but it doesn't give the ability bounce. So, but yeah, it is Blade Master from past sets. So the double attack thing gives you a chance to do it, and it just increases more the more you add. So 3, 5, 7. Synaptic Web, it reduces your mana costs at 3, 5, and 7, just scales up the more you have. Bio-Leeching is the only one that is team-wide. It doesn't just give it to your mutants, it gives your whole team Omnivamp, and it scales up the more you go, 3, 5, and 7. And then Metamorphosis, it grants you defensive stats like armor and magic resist, not health, armor and magic resist, and gives you a tiny amount of AP and AD. But yeah, and that scales up more you go, 3, 5, and 7. So that is very good if you're trying to stall out. Okay, now Mutant is a trait that you only play if you are carrying a mutant unit. You really don't play mutants other than that. So if you're carrying a Rek'Sai, you're going to be playing 3 mutants. As I said before, the Rek'Sai build you most commonly will pair with Malzahar and Kha'Zix. That's just kind of how it shakes out. But yeah, you really only play 3 mutants if you're wanting to play mutant as a carry. The only time you'd play 3 mutant and you're not carrying one of them is if you have the one Bio-Leeching, which gives your whole team Omnivamp. But I am not a big Bio-Leeching gamer. I don't subscribe to the idea. I feel like I just get more confused when I'm trying to fit in mutants for that purpose. So if that confuses you, don't worry about it. Cool. Playing Cho'Gath, you're playing around Bruisers, playing around mutants. You're playing around Malzahar, you're playing around Arcanists, you're probably playing around Bruisers. You're playing Kha'Zix, you're playing around Sins and whatever makes sense. And if you're playing Kaisa, you're just pairing her with 4 cost and 5 cost, and just make sure she deals damage, set her up to succeed, right? Cool. What are some of the best mutations for these? If you end up playing like a reroll Kassadin, Metamorphosis is going to be very good. Adrenal Glands will be good. Voracious is fine. Cybernetic is fine. Rek'Sai is going to be very good with all of these, honestly. Bio-Leeching, Synaptic Web is probably her worst one, but it's probably still fine. Adrenal Glands, very great. Voidborn, very great. Voracious Appetite, very great. Cybernetic, very great. Metamorphosis, very great. The only one that is not super great is Synaptic Web. Cho'Gath works with all of them. Synaptic Web, probably the worst one for Cho'Gath as well. Malzahar's best one is definitely the... it's either Synaptic Web, which lowers the mana cost, very good on Malzahar, or it is Metamorphosis, as it lasts a long time, or Voidborn, very strong, the true damage and execute. Voidborn is probably his best one, but Synaptic Web and the other ones are pretty good. And honestly, the Hyper Adrenal Glands are pretty good as well, as it makes him castle upgrade. Even though he's not attack based, he's just attacking really fast and he's casting a lot. So that one's very good. Adrenal Glands is my least favorite. And then Kha'Zix, probably good with all of them, if I'm being honest. Yeah, probably good with all of them. And then Kaisa, also another one who's pretty much good with all of them. She can benefit from all of them pretty well. Okay, cool. So we were on Mutant, so we're on Mercenary. Okay, Mercenary is another fun one. So Mercenary is another econ trait. They have in every single set they have a trait like this. Think about like Fortune, that sort of thing. Draconic. Wait. Was there oh, whatever. I'm not gonna trip. Anyways, so here's the econ trait for this set. Yeah, Draconic was the one. Okay, here's the econ trait for this set. This is really fun to play around. If you want to play around mercs in your game, you just play around mercs and you're trying to lose, right? And you're trying to build up some stacks to get a big cash out. You can also play win streak mercs if you want to. You're not playing mercs as an actual comp. It's a very unique situation. You would only do that if you got a merc heart or a merc soul or whatever. You get a bunch of merc emblems. And then you would just play all the mercs, right? All of them, that makes sense. Usually you would not play Quinn if you can fit in 5 mercs. You would drop Quinn, you'd play around Misfortune, Gangplank, and Tam Canch, and Bruisers. So if you want to play mercs as carry, they pair very well with Bruisers. The most common one that you will carry will be Misfortune. As I said before, it pairs very well with Zach. Very synergistic, easy to move into that because you'll be playing allowing early game, but you don't have to play those. And then you can play this, right? So it pairs very well with Bruisers because we have Tam Kinch and Alawi. But remember, you don't have to play that. Misfortune does very well with stall and stuff like that. So you can end up playing Misfortune later with bodyguards and stuff like that. You just drop mercs. But for the most part, guys, when you play mercs, you try to lose early. You try to be really strong mid game to cash out, and then you either continue to play mercs and you 3-star them, or you pivot to a completely different comp and play something else different. But what mercenaries do, and I realized I didn't even read the trait. At 3, you roll 2 dice. At 5, the dices are even luckier. And at 7, upon winning, you roll a 3rd dice. 7 is very hard to play. I've literally never played it in my life because it is so hard to fit in and so hard to make work. Because you actually have to win the round, which is very hard to do if you're playing 7 Merc. Anyway, so what you have to do is, as long as you have Merc active, you will gain a treasure chest. Win or lose, it's better. The more you lose, the better the loot is. So you can play around that however you want. A lot of people only play loot streak mercs, but you can also play win streak merc just to get econ. I play a lot of win streak mercs. It's fine. Cool. And the more you lose, the better the loot can be. And it's really just RNG. Roll 2 die at the end. Roll 2 dice at the end of the round, or at the beginning of the round or whatever. And then if you win a round, you get all the cash out. You just have to make sure you have 3 mercs in to cash out. So even if you run 5 mercs to get all the 5 merc bonuses and the 5 merc loot, because the loot is better at 5 mercs, you can drop down to 3 mercs and we'll still get, and when you win the round, you will still get that 5 merc loot that you accrued earlier. But you will no longer be getting the 5 loot odds now that you've dropped down. Does that make sense? So yeah, if you have 5 merc loot in your box, it will not go away if you drop down to 3. But if you drop down to 2, you will not have any loot in your box anymore until you add 3 back again. All that loot will still be there, but you can only cash out if you still have 3 mercs in there. The loot doesn't disappear. It's just you can only cash out if you have at minimum 3 mercenary units in, or have the 3 mercenary trait active with an emblem. That is mercs. Okay, mercenary. I guess we would be at Hextech now. I feel like I've talked a lot about Hextech. But we got Jarvan the 4th, Nocturne, Sejuani, Swain, Lucian, Alistair, and Sivir. Okay, so for the most part, Hextech is going to be a splash trait, depending on who you're carrying, right? Yeah, so if you're carrying a Lucian, probably going to be splashing at 2 or at 4, then that wouldn't be a splash trait anymore. But if you're going to splash it, you can splash it at 2. If you're playing Alistair as your frontliner in the late game, probably splash at 2. And then Sivir, if you play it late game, unless you're already playing vertical, probably splash at 2 or 4. Anyways, or alternatively, you can play this as a reroll build and play as vertical. Hextechs pair very well with strikers. As you can already see, we already have striker active. Pairs very well with strikers, as we do have Sivir and Jarvan the 4th. And we have Sejuani here, and Sejuani is a bruiser who we can pair with Rek'Sai, who is also a striker. And then a 4th striker we can add in is either our 4-cost striker, Aurelia, or if we want to play Socialite, we can play Gnar. So very good with strikers specifically. But again, if you're going to carry one of these units, they just pair with whoever you're going to carry. So if there's ever an assassin, if there's ever a patch where you can play Nocturne carry, then obviously you're going to pair him with assassins, right? If there's a patch where Hextech Swain carry is very good, I've played some Hextech Swain carry, it's okay. Then obviously you can pair with some Arcanists if you want to, but unless you have if you have some stacking items and you don't need to, Lucian gonna pair very well with his twin shots, obviously. And then Alistair, very stock standard tank, and then Sivir, who is a striker, already pairs very well with strikers, Hextech. So yeah, easiest thing to play with Hextech is probably going to be strikers. Other than that, just if you're going to carry one of these other units, just pair whatever their synergies are. Okay, Hextech. Glutton is a unique trait to Tahm Kench, which we will talk about on Tahm Kench's or on the unit guide. Okay, Caitlyn, Vi, Sejuani, and Jace are all the enforcers. So enforcer is what enforcer does. So at 2, this is all you need to know. At the beginning of combat, a target is stunned for 5 seconds, very similar to, and that'll change over time, the balance. And after losing a certain percent, they're stunned very similar to Zephyr. They can't move, they can't cast their abilities, but they can gain mana, and any other items that have a passive on them will be applying the passive, like Sunfire, stuff like that. After losing a certain percentage of the health, at the time of this video, it's 40%. Then enforcers, then or not enforcers, then that unit will become active again. So either after 5 seconds or if they lose 40% of their health, whichever one comes first. Okay. And enforcers will not stun enemies who are immune to crowd control effects. So this changes a lot from patch to patch, but so it shouldn't work on people with QSS, and it doesn't work on Colossus. Does not work on Colossus for sure, but the QSS thing might change from patch to patch, but that is how that reads currently. They change that a lot. So okay, so at 2, it is going to be the enemy with the most health. So the highest health unit, so like a 3-star unit or a tank. It's going to be them for sure. And then at 4, it'll be the tank or the 3-star unit, whatever, highest health, and the unit that did the most damage in the last combat. Cool. So very good at 4, but typically you only play as 4 if you have like a heart, and it fits natural. You have like an enforcer heart, something like that, or you have enforcer soul. I don't think enforcer soul is a thing anymore. But yeah, you typically only play 4 if you have that, but it is very good at 4. Very easy trait to splash in the early game with, you want to play around bodyguards and Caitlyn as like a carry. Very good in the early game, very good to fit in. And especially if you have a heart from your augment, very, very strong. Very natural if you're going to be playing Bruisers as your front line to fit in. You just add Vi to your existing Bruiser front line. Very, very, very strong. I love that Vi is an enforcer and Sejuani is an enforcer. Fits so well together. And then Jace is a late game enforcer. You know, you're just going to pair Jace with Vi in the late game. If you're going to play Jace as a carry or Jace as a utility unit, or you play an Innovator, you're trying to fit him into your comp, you're going to pair very well with a Vi. That's all you really need to know. Very small trait. Very good splash synergy in the comps, and it makes sense. Okay, we're on Debonair. Debonair, we got Brand, Syndra, Talon, Leona, Draven, and Zeri. What you need to know about Debonair is Debonair champions gain a bonus health and ability power. If there is a Debonair VIP in play, they activate their unique bonus. Sell the old VIP for a chance to see one in your shop. We'll talk about that in a minute. So at 3, you gain health. 150, 15 ability power, and it just scales up throughout that. So 5, you gain more of that. 7, you gain more of that. So obviously, so you can play this as a vertical trait, or you can play this as a 3-unit trait. You will most commonly play this as a 3-unit trait just to get the VIP bonus active on whoever you're carrying and to get the small stat bonus. The big bonus of playing Debonair is the VIP bonus. But I'm sure there'll be patches where playing vertical Debonair is very strong, or playing like a reroll vertical-esque Debonair build will be very strong. But right now, just think about it as you need to have the 3-unit trade in to enable your VIP carry. Other than that, if it makes sense to play vertical, you can play vertical. Okay, so what is VIP? It is very similar to Chosen if you played set 4. But if you didn't play set 4, the way it works is in your shop, there will be in your shop whenever you're rolling, a Debonair can be a VIP. And if they're a VIP, they get an additional bonus to their kit. I will talk about all the specific bonuses whenever we do the unit guide. So specifically, Draven gains infinite attack range. So it's very strong. So you want to enable that. You can only have 1 VIP on your team. So if you have a VIP, you will not see VIPs in your shop. So if you want a new VIP, let's say you buy a brand VIP for the early game and you want to play Draven VIP late game, like you build items for that, you will have to sell your brand before you start rolling because you will not have a VIP appear. Cool. Now, if you have Debonair trait active on your board and you don't have a VIP, you have a 75% chance that the VIPs you do see in your shop, or the Debonairs that you do see in your shop, will be a VIP. But if you don't have Debonair active, it is a much smaller chance, like 25% or something, that the Debonair you'll see in your shop will be a VIP. So if you want to hit a VIP unit, make sure you have your Debonair active on your board. Will increase the chance of you hitting that VIP. Cool. So if you, so this is one of those ones you either play as a vertical trait or as a 3-unit trait. And if you're playing as a 3-unit trait, you're just going to play the other units around them that enable them. If you're going to play Brand, you're probably going to play around some Arcanists or some reroll units that you can play at the same time. So maybe like Bodyguards, Arcanists, Yordles, that sort of thing. Is where you'd be playing around Brand. If you're playing Syndra, you can be playing Bodyguards with Leona, obviously. Bodyguards with Leona, you can play some Scholars. And then also, if you're going to be rolling for Syndra, you want to roll for Talon at the same time. So you're probably going to be playing like Talon and Echo. And so you're going to be playing like Assassins, Bodyguards, Scholars, that sort of thing. Leona, Bodyguard fits into Bodyguard comps and will fit into every single Debonair comp. Every single one of them will include Leona if it makes sense. You know, like 99% of the time, Leona will fit in to a Debonair comp because she is the only frontliner in this comp. Draven typically will pair with Leona and Syndra if you need 3. Or if you're playing 5, then obviously you just play like Syndra plus Zeri and Talon. Or if you have a heart, obviously it'd be best not to have to play Talon. But typically, if you don't have a heart and you're just going to play 3, you're going to pair with Leona and Syndra. You're going to be playing some Bodyguards and some Scholars. Same idea for Zeri, Bodyguard, Scholar, best ones to pair. And then unless you're going to be playing 5, or if you're getting if you're getting a heart, you just decide if you want to play Leona or Syndra, which one of those, all the good stuff. All right, cool. That's Debonair. We are almost done. Holy, okay, excited. Okay, we got Camille, Zillion, Jin, Oriana. Clockwork is a very cool trait, not as cool as Spirit. Clockwork is very similar to Spirit in set 4. If you guys played set 4, I thought Spirit was so fun. This one is not quite as fun, but it is cool. Okay, so your entire team, this is a team-wide effect, gains attack speed with an additional increase per augment in the hex core. So this scales throughout the game. It is good early game, but it scales better the longer the game goes on. So as we can see at intervals of 2, 4, and 6, the base attack speed goes up and the attack speed per augment. So as you can see, it's 10%. Plus 5% per augment. So late game, it'll be 35% or 25% math. Sorry. That's how that works. So it is better as the game goes on. Very strong. Cool. So best thing to play with Clockwork is snipers, obviously. Snipers benefit very well from attack speed. Jin scales with attack speed, his attack damage does. And Jin is a Clockwork and Oriana is a Clockwork. So it fits. If you're going to play Jin, you're always going to play Clockwork because you can play Jin, Ori, plus another Enchanter, plus a frontline, which is most likely going to be Bodyguards, because Bodyguards and Enchanters work very well together. Jin needs a lot of frontline, which Bodyguards plus Enchanters are probably the tankiest frontline in the game. Most of the patches. If you want to play this in the early game, you'll typically be playing around Innovators, or you're just going to be playing around Challengers, which is what both of these units have as tags. Camille as a Challenger and Zillion as an Innovator. So you're probably playing around Innovators and Challengers, or both. And then late game, you're going to be playing around these two. The only time you play 4 Clockwork is if you're going to be playing Genovators and you're playing Zillion, and then you have a Clockwork card and you add in Jin and Ori. The time you'd play this as a 4-unit trait is if you had a Clockwork Soul or a Clockwork thing, or if you're playing Genovators. That's going to be the only time that you'll end up playing that. Cool. The last one. We're on the last one. Woo! All right, we got Singed, Twitch, Warwick, Trinimir, Zach, Renata, Victor. Woo! We have it. We've done it. Okay, so this is Chemtech. What does Chemtech do? Chemtech, after dropping below 75% health, and that changes with balance a little bit sometimes. Chemtech champions become chem-powered, gaining attack speed, damage reduction, and regenerate a % of their maximum health for each second. As you can see, the stats here, they scale the more you have, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Chemtech is one of those ones you either play as vertical, meaning you go from 3 to 9 or 3 to 7, or you just play 3, or you play 5 if it makes sense. You know, if you have a heart and you can splash it in. So a lot of times you're just playing 3 Chemtech, but sometimes you'll play vertical in games that make sense, like you have augments. But yeah, you typically only play really vertical if you have augments or you're re-rolling, right? Because you can 3-star multiple, a bunch of them. And so getting the extra value will be, getting the more Chemtechs will give you a lot of value, that sort of thing. I feel like I'm over-explaining. Anyways, Chemtechs pair very well with Innovators and Challengers in the early game because we have 2 Challengers here, we have an Innovator here, and then Camille pairs very well with Innovators as well, who is also a Challenger. So Challenger and Innovators can be very good. Obviously, you can play Innovators plus Twitch, if you're going to do that Twitch reroll build and play Innovators Assassins, that works out fine as well. In the late game, pairs very well with Bruisers and Challengers, or Bruisers and Challengers, or Scholars. Pairs very well with that. But Challengers is the easiest one to pair with Chemtechs. That's just how it is. And then if you play Chemtech vertical, you just play all the Chemtechs. So pretty simple. But yeah, as I said earlier, pairs very well with Challengers. And then late game, you know, you can splash in 3 Chemtech if you're going to be carrying one of these folks over here. If you're playing Bruisers, very easy to splash in Chemtech with Scholar, that sort of thing. But yeah, pairs super well with Challengers. All right, guys, that is it. I believe we missed one. If I missed one, please let me know in the comment section, and I will add it to the pinned comment if I missed something. If you guys have any questions, please ask them below. I will answer any questions. The only things I don't answer or I don't respond to is just overtly negative comments for no reason, or anything like that. Just be kind in the comment section. I read all of them, and I respond to all of them that are that I have time to, or really warrant a response from me. I'll try to respond to all of them. But other than that, I appreciate all of you guys who came by. It's over an hour-long video. If you made it this far, please like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you want more of me, I stream at twitch.tv/TFT. I'm not streaming right now because my internet is just doing that to me. So I'm not I'm not streaming right now because of that. I want to stream, but I'm not. But I have a fiber company coming to dig in my yard soon to lay a fiber line. So hopefully we'll get that remedied and we'll start streaming a lot more on Twitch. But I'd love to see there that the streams are lit, honestly. Anyways, if you want more of me, you can follow me there or follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Other than that, I appreciate all of you guys just coming here for this video. And yeah, I just hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night. And wherever you are, I just hope you're doing well. See you guys. Bye.